Welcome to our open book. Very nice to be with you tonight. Sorry I didn't send out a alert on X. Hi there, John Mahoney, Rhonda Scott, Mark Gladstone, Dorothy Joy, Reverend Flowers, Diana Lynch, SR, Derek, Molly Katz, Laurie Tierney, Mr. Dickens, Brooke Borland, Mary Bisbee Beck, also Elise, Diana Lynch. Hi there, yes, how was it? Hi there, Wendy Richardson. We have a daughter who just returned. So, I have been enjoying all over again this terrific Benson Bobrick's Angel in the Whirlwind, story of the U.S. Revolution. Hi there, Andrea Elizabeth. Hi there, Shirley Wise. People on Open Book say, hello, Elise. Diana Lynch. And he puts his hand and heart on one of the cruel ironies of part of it. So let me just go ahead and start reading. How could people who believe that all men are created equal countenance, and in some cases actually believe in slavery? The colonies, the word slavery had a power of suggestion all its own. By 1774, it seemed to the leaders of the revolutionary movement that there was, quote, a settled fixed plan for enslaving the colonies or bringing them under arbitrary government. John Dickinson had written, those who were taxed without their consent are slaves. And Hosea Quincy exclaimed, I speak it with grief, I speak it with anguish. Britons are our oppressors, we are slaves. George Washington similarly expressed his conviction that the English government was, quote, endeavoring by every piece of art and despotism to fix the shackles of slavery upon us, and so on. In a manner of speaking, he writes, the patriot spoke with a single metaphorical voice. It was, however, a delicate matter for colonists to accuse the British of trying to enslave them, because abject slavery was such a prominent feature of colonial life. This was noted with irony, of course, in England, where Dr. Samuel Johnson, for example, asked, how is it that the loudest yelps for liberty come from the drivers of slaves? And Horace Walpole remarked, I should think the souls of the Africans would sit heavy on the swords of the Americans. On this point, too, John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, was a prolific pamphleteer for the imperial point of view. The Negroes in America are slaves, he wrote. The whites enjoy liberty. Is it not then all this outcry about liberty and slavery mere rant and playing upon words? The issue was hotly discussed. James Otis holding that by the law of nature all men were born free wrote, does it follow that 'tis right to enslave a man because he is black? Will short-curled hair instead of Christian hair help the argument? Can any logical inference in favor of slavery be drawn? And he goes on to describe some physical traits. Nothing better can be said in favor of a trade than the most shocking violation of the law of nature. There's a direct tendency to diminish the idea of the inestimable value of liberty. In Massachusetts, recent legislative efforts to abolish the slave trade had been blocked by the government. But at the Harvard commencement of 1773, students had debated the issue. Many Southerners were adamantly opposed to the practice and would have shed it had a majority been prepared to go along. Hi there, Elizabeth. It would be Jefferson's own tendentious argument in the first draft of the Declaration of Independence that the practice had been forced on the colonies by the British and perniciously bred into their economic life. First Continental Congress, however, pledged itself to oppose the slave trade generally. Rhode Island noting, quote, that those who are desirous of enjoying all the advantages of liberty themselves should be willing to extend personal liberty to others. Ruled that the slaves imported in the colony would be thereafter freed. Connecticut followed suit. Delaware prohibited the importation of slaves. And Pennsylvania taxed the trade so heavily as almost to extinguish it there. Hi there, Dan Harper. Abigail Adams spoke for many when she wrote on September 24, 1774, "I wish most sincerely that there was not a slave in the province. It always appeared a most iniquitous scheme to me to fight ourselves for what we are daily robbing and plundering from those who have as good a right to freedom as we have." Tough, true words. Conversely, the rhetoric of slavery has done as much to arouse anti-British feeling, especially in the South, where white colonials had but to behold the degraded condition of their own blacks to imagine themselves in a related plight. English oppression through taxes and trade regulations, of course, could not possibly have rendered them so abject. But the idea of it influenced their apprehension. Yet at the time of the Revolution, he writes, black and white might have been identified as one. In colonial America, any slave who rose against and killed his master was condemned for treason as well as murder. In the famous Massachusetts case, two slaves, Mark and his wife Phyllis, were so charged and executed. This is sickening to read, even though evidence emerged that their master had abused them. The delegates of the First Continental Congress worked hard, disputed their differences, and found points of agreement and sometimes broad common ground. Occasionally, they made their task harder than it might have been. Given the vast array of talent assembled, it was inevitable that some of them would give themselves up to displays of rhetoric and knowledge beyond the point at hand. The consequence of this, complained John Adams, is that business is drawn and spun out to an immeasurable length. Makes you wonder about editorial meetings. I believe if it was moved and seconded that we should come to a resolution that 3 and 2 make 5, we should be entertained with logic and rhetoric, law, history, politics, and mathematics, and then we should pass the resolution unanimously. But at the end of the day, the delegates also knew how to unwind, and on the whole, they savored the diversity of the company they were in and marveled at the cause that had made them one. A typical session met from 9 until 3, after which, wrote Adams, we are unable to do anything but eat and drink. Wow. I shall be killed with all the kindness in this place, he told his wife, as his abstemious diet, as prescribed by his doctors, was soon forgotten in sinful feasts of everything which could delight the eye or lure the taste, curds and creams, jellies, sweetmeats of various sorts, 20 sorts of tarts, fools, trifles, floating islands, whipped syllabubs, Parmesan cheese, punch, wine, porter, beer, etc. We go home fatigued to death with business and company and care, yet we hold out surprisingly. The founders. Let me just read a little more if I can. On September 16th, the Congress received a copy of the Suffolk County Resolves, framed under the Massachusetts revolutionary leader, Dr. Joseph Warren. Under the leadership of Boston, the towns of Suffolk County had worked out an organized plan of resistance. Warren, something of a firebrand, had once delivered an oration on the anniversary of the Boston Massacre. You never knew this, dressed in a Ciceronian toga. And the language of the resolves was also oratorical in the extreme. Quote, "If we arrest the hand which would ransack our pockets," read the preamble, "if we disarm the parricide which points the dagger to our bosoms, if we successfully resist the unparalleled usurpation of unconstitutional power whereby our capital is robbed of the means of life, whereby the streets of Boston are thronged with military executioners, the torrent will roll our reputations to the latest period when the streams of time shall be absorbed in the abyss of eternity." After condemning the coercive acts and urging a boycott of English goods, he warned, "As men and Protestant Christians, we are indispensably obliged to take all the measures for our security to acquaint ourselves with the art of war as soon as possible." King George was of no more moderate mind. "The die is now cast," he declared, "but the colonies must either submit or triumph. I do not wish to come to severer measures, but we must not retreat." Then, I think that's a perfect time for the King George song from Hamilton, isn't it? "You'll be back, I can swear." Oh, my word. In any event, this is just a magisterial history. Angel in the Whirlwind, Benson Bobrick. It's just terrific. We're going to be going through, I think, a little David McCullough later in the week. No open book tomorrow night. I have a book appearance. If I can, we'll try and do a live feed from there. Just not sure technically about that stuff, but we'll try. It's at the Hill Center in Washington, D.C. with our good friend Bill Press. And so we would like to do that. So I sound fully armed to remind you of my love. Ba, 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 yeah. So thanks very much for being with us tonight, everybody on our open book. Yes, Marianne, I'm looking forward to that too. I think it's tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. So I am looking forward to that a lot. Ah, right. I will be on Milk Street. So thank you. Thanks very much for being with us tonight on our open book, and we will see you later. Take care. Bye-bye.